Welcome back, everyone, to Data Science for Everyone. Today, we're going to be talking about surveys. Let's get started. So, the purpose of survey research is to gather and analyze information by questioning individuals who are either representative of the research population or the entire research population. A survey refers to the study that uses the representative sample. A census is a study where the entire population is involved. The aim of survey research is to study relationships between specific variables, which are identified at the outset of the research and stated as either a hypothesis or a research question, or to describe certain characteristics of the population. The findings from the survey can then be generalized to the wider population. Survey research can include qualitative and quantitative research, but is usually quantitative with a limited qualitative element, which is more likely to be anecdotal than truly qualitative. The term survey is often used interchangeably with questionnaire. The two are not the same thing, and it can lead to confusion if the distinction between the two is not made very obvious. A survey is a research method that the purpose and aims of which have already been stated. Although data collection must be standardized, there are options for data collection within a survey. A questionnaire is a very specific data collection technique which can be used within the variety of research methods. A survey, then, is a research method used to structure the collection and analysis of standardized information from a defined population using a representative sample of that population. The probability sampling is vital in order to make valid generalizations about the wider population. When non-probability sampling is used, you must take care with any statements that you make that attempt to generalize to the wider population. There are two types of survey: descriptive surveys and explanatory surveys. It is possible to apply both methods to the same study, as will become apparent when we're examining the nature of these two approaches. The purpose of a descriptive survey is to describe the situation and to look for trends and patterns within the same group that can be generalized to the defined population of the study. The data gathered in this type of survey is usually a combination of measurements, counts, and brief narratives, which are then analyzed using descriptive statistics such as measures of central tendency and standard deviation. Because of the approach to sampling, usually random sampling, and the nature of the data gathered, this method does not lend itself to be more sophisticated statistical analysis. Indeed, it is not its purpose. It is usually for researchers to put some interpretation on the results based on the combination of current facts gathered in the previous research. The definition here talks about the cause and effect, in which in reality, any attempt to demonstrate causation within the natural human condition is fundamentally flawed. The closest we can hope to come to examining relationships between variables in a natural setting is not actually causation, it's the covariance or correlation. Surveys always take place in a natural setting, and under these conditions, it's impossible to establish the definitive cause and effect relationships. At best, we can demonstrate a probable link between variables in the study. In the next section, we will talk about experimental research, and we'll go further into the natural causality. Many surveys begin with a hypothesis and attempt to support or refute that hypothesis. This can be appropriate, but never to be attempted to claim that purpose of the survey is to prove the hypothesis. This claim will never withstand serious critical review. Explanatory surveys apply inferential statistical techniques to numerical data to establish a relationship between variables. This does not mean that the data gathered must be in a numerical form. It means that all data must be coded in order to allow for statistical manipulation. The purpose of this type of survey is to identify and offer explanations for relationships between variables. Sampling is very important to this type of survey as it has major implications for the generalizability of the findings. The survey process. Although there are differing types of survey, the process follows a very similar pattern whichever approach is being taken. Survey research usually follows a linear and structured process. Steps in the process can be clearly defined and rarely overlap, and the survey process consists of the following stages. Here we see about 10 stages to the survey process. We identify a general topic area, investigate the literature, establish a hypothesis, identify a suitable population, apply the appropriate sampling technique, select and design data collection instruments, pilot a data collection instrument, collect data, analyze data, and present the findings. So, this is identifying a general topic area. This will very much depend on the situation. It may be that you have been given a specific topic to investigate within your workplace, in which case the topic may already be decided for you. If this is part of a research project being done as part of an academic qualification, then identifying the topic is up to you with guidance from your advisor. At this stage, it's important to remember that you will have to remain motivated throughout the research, so make sure that the topic is one that holds your interest and enthusiasm. Investigate the literature. Regardless of whether you have selected your own topic or have been given a topic to investigate, you must familiarize yourself with the context and background. Reading reports of past research will also provide you with a valuable insight of appropriate design features for your own survey, such as appropriate sampling, specific areas to be covered in the questioning, and also hints to what not to do. Remember that in all research, you usually achieve more by attempting less. Keep the hypothesis as simple and as clear as you can. You may be attempting to support a hypothesis, but a survey will never prove it. It may, however, refute the hypothesis, and this is usually as informative as supporting it. There is not always a clear distinction here, but as a general rule, descriptive surveys will have aims and objectives, and explanatory surveys will state a hypothesis. This is not always the case, but more often than not, this distinction applies. Identifying a suitable population. This is the entire population, the group that you will be making generalizations about once you have reached your conclusions. It is important that you define the population from the outset in order to give credibility to your findings. You are not attempting to say something about everybody or everything, only the population you have identified. There are a number of practical constraints to consider at this point, whichever sampling technique you apply. Be practical and only attempt what you can legitimately estimate will be achievable. It is always tempting to try to cover everything, but this could do more harm than good in the long run. Although thorough and rigorous analysis of a smaller sample is always more worthwhile than a sloppy analysis of an enormous sample. Remember to take account of the time available to you, who you can reach, and the location you have access to, and geographic limitations and financial constraints. You will need to demonstrate that all attempts were made to make the sample as good as it could get under the circumstances. Examine ways to make the most of what you have, not attempting to exceed your limitations. Selecting and designing and collecting collection instruments. At this stage, you'll know how you intend to how to collect your data, and you will have planned questionnaires, interviews, structured observations, etc. As this is a survey research, you will need to design the data collection instrument in a way that it will produce standardized responses. So many times we will read reflections on research with such comments as responses to this question were difficult to analyze as there were clearly some misinterpretation of the meaning by the respondent. This usually is because there was an error in the construction of the question. Pay close attention to how the questions are worded and make sure the responses can be coded. Pilot a collection instrument. Always pilot your data collection instrument. Amend it and try again. Do this over and over as needed. This is most certainly the most important thing and step in this chain. You may think that your question is crystal clear with no hint of ambiguity. You will be amazed at how many meanings can be given to an apparently straightforward question or instruction. Make sure that your and that everything is clear as humanly possible. Collect data. At last, the field work itself. Now you can actually do your observing, interviewing, and administer your questionnaires. The mechanics of performing the administrative aspects of these activities should not be underestimated. And the survey research analysis does not usually begin until all the data has been gathered, unless it is a staged survey with a number of rounds. Even in this case, analysis of each round will only take place after the data has been collected. This is another significant difference between surveys and case studies. That said, it does not mean that you can prepare for the analysis long before this point. If questions have been well constructed and the responses have been pre-coded, then this stage will run a lot more smoothly. Be prepared for this before your data collection is complete. This will likely be the single most challenging aspect of the research, and at the point at which you may feel the most isolated. Make sure this stage is comfortable as it can be by being prepared for it and knowing exactly what you are looking for and how you will find it. Present your findings and conclusions. The data is gathered and analyzed. The literature review is written, and it almost begins to feel like the work is done. But often the presentation stage is the most demanding in terms of actually sitting down and writing it up. Take time when selecting ways of presenting your data. Make sure that you link your conclusions directly back to the original purpose of the investigation, and make sure that you select the most appropriate form of presentation for the data that you have analyzed, and that your findings lead naturally to your conclusions. You are engaging in rigorous research activity, and it must demonstrate validity. The linear process may give you a feeling of security, but these stages can be complex and demanding. In summary, surveys used when the purpose of research is to describe a population or characteristic of that population, or to determine the relationship between specific variables within that population. It is important to distinguish between a survey as a research method and as a questionnaire as a data collection technique. Although the terms are often used interchangeably within the literature, they are not synonymous. Surveys rely on the representativeness and standardization in order to generalize findings from a sample to a wider population. Data collection techniques appropriate to survey research are questionnaires, structured interviews, and direct structured observation. The important thing to remember with a survey is that questioning must be consistent. That is, you must ask the entire sample the same questions in the same way, usually restrict their potential responses within pre-coded parameters. This is probably the greatest difference between a survey and a case study. There are many ways in which these two methods differ, but the most obvious difference is in structure. Surveys are designed to produce a generalization within the population. Case studies are concerned with individual perceptions, beliefs, and emotions. If interviews are used in a survey, then those interviews need to be structured in order to allow for grouping of responses. The same applies for observation. If you guys like this, please comment, subscribe, and hit that like button, and I will see you guys next time. Bye-bye.